Members, it's about time to make a start. We have formed the quorum. We'll proceed with the election of chairman of the panel on education. The Secretariat notified members that by the end of the deadline, we have received one valid nomination for the office of chairmanship, and that's Dr. Priscilla Leung, proposed by Professor Lau Chi-Pang and seconded by Mr. Tang Fei. Dr. Leung has not been elected as chairman or deputy chairman of any panels, nor is she a chairman or deputy chairman of any government advisory bodies. So in accordance with the ROP and House rules, I declare Dr. Priscilla Leung elected as chairman of the education panel. Congratulations. Thank you very much, Regina. We are on to the election of the deputy chairman of the panel on education. The clerk has already notified members that by the end of the nomination deadline, we have received only one valid nomination. The nominee is Mr. Tang Fei, proposed by Mr. Stanley Ng, seconded by Professor Sun Dong. And Mr. Tang Fei has not been elected as chairman or deputy chairman of any panels, nor is he chairman or deputy chairman of any government advisory bodies. So in accordance with the rules of procedure and the House rules, I declare that Mr. Tang Fei duly elected as deputy chairman of the education panel. Congratulations, Mr. Tang. All right, members, let's get down to the agenda proper. We usually hold a meeting on the first Friday each month at 10:45. If members are agreeable to this arrangement, please refer to the schedule of meetings tabled before you, and let's see what comments they have to make. If not, then we'll proceed in accordance with the schedule before you. Our next items for discussion at the next meeting. Policy briefing. On the 16th of February, the Council will hold a motion of thanks debate on the policy address. At the request of the administration, the clerk has set aside the 7th of February, Monday, at 4:30 for the Secretary for Education to brief members on the policy matters in connection with the policy address. After the use of this document, we have had a word with the Education Bureau, and the 8th of February would be a better choice. You have probably have received the notification regarding the date of February 7th. And the briefing is now rescheduled to the 8th of February, a Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Unless you have any contrary views, let's so decide. In November last year, the admin wing wrote to us to say that the relevant officials have already given us the briefing. And as I said, on the 16th of February, we're going to have the motion of thanks debate. And we have quite a lot of new members. and members can put questions during the briefing session. After the policy briefing, the administration proposes that we deal with the triennial funding allocation for the UGC. So this is going to be taken at the meeting scheduled for the 8th of February. Any comments? If not, so those are the two items for the meeting scheduled on the 8th of February. Yes, Mrs. Regina Ip. Are you inviting comments? Yes, I'd like to jump the queue a bit. All right, I'm going to invite members to bring up issues for this legislative year. So please press the button to decide the sequence of speaking. Mrs. Regina Ip raised her hand quite a few moments ago, so we'd like to give the floor to Mrs. Ip first, please. You probably heard from the newspaper that Mount Kelly has swindled people $100–200 million. They've taken a case to the police, and some management staff was investigated. In the UK, Mount Kelly denied any connection with this, and the parents came complaining to me that there are only a dozen or so students left, and the teachers are really very sloppy, and they said that the Education Bureau is falling down on its job in supervision, and the Bureau Secretary refused to come forward and say anything. I think they ought to give an account to the public, and they are really harming the students and the way they operate. They owe us an explanation. Ms. Lillian Kwok. Thank you, Madam Chair. On the 8th of February, I'd like to add an item regarding the allowance for anti-pandemic work, and they have seen an allocation on a one-off basis, and I'm wondering whether we can have an item for this. And also, grade structure review should be undertaken regarding the teachers and the clerical staff and the support staff, and I hope that there would be some discussion. Mr. Chi Kwok Keung, Madam Chair, thank you. At the next meeting, I hope that the pay structure for primary school should be discussed, and for P1 and S1 allocation of places a scheme, and with the declining birth rate, the kindergartens and the childcare centers are really suffering a great deal, and I hope that there will be some measures to tide them over the difficulties. And that there should be a link between training and the QF, and I hope that there would be some short, medium, and long-term measures for education. Mr. Teck Chi Yuen. Madam Chair, there are two items I'd like to bring up for discussion. The first one is the decline in birth rate. Compared with the previous record, we've seen a drop of 30–40%, and there is also the effect of immigration. There is some sharp drop in the level of enrollment, and I hope that there will be some longer-term measures. Second, I'm more concerned about parental education. The government has set up a working group earlier about the school parent cooperation. There is a report published, and I want to follow up on the details of the report. Professor Lau Chi Pang, Madam Chair, there are 2 points I'd like to bring up. First, Chinese history as a subject, and how can these be further developed in the curriculum, in particular for senior secondary education, when we turn the liberal education to CSD, and I think the Chinese history should be a compulsory subject. And we talked about the declining birth rate, and the DSE is no longer in the same situation vis-a-vis admission to university. But I hope that the senior secondary students' education should be improved. Mr. Lam Chen Singh, Madam Chair. Vocational training is something I'd like to bring up, in particular vis-a-vis the QF qualification framework. There are so many new professions and IT, and I'm wondering whether the QF can tie in with the latest development. Mr. Tang Fei, Deputy. Madam Chair, thank you. Two things, if I may. Like Mr. Tick said a moment ago, the population is graying, and there is a mismatch in the education system. I think we have to bring this up. Now, given that classes are cut, and I think this should be tied in with the importation of talents. I think this the education branch in Hong Kong should be maintained. Second, maybe the COVID news has overshadowed everything. The Integrity Committee has been done away with. At the end of the day, we need to have teachers to teach integrity and ethics. How can we rebuild in Hong Kong the faith in the professionalism of the teaching profession? And this is a burning issue. Mr. Stanley Ng, Madam Chair, thank you. I am particularly concerned about the national education and education on NSL from kindergarten through to university. So I have written to the panel to suggest that under the panel we should set up a subcommittee for the promotion of NSL and national education, and we should promote and supervise the work of the Education Bureau. I've highlighted 11 areas of work to be undertaken. I think the committee should be running for a year or so before we keep the situation under further review, and if necessary, we can continue with the subcommittee. And I hope that, Madam Chair, you would give us the consent for this to be up and running. Indeed, we need to improve this particular area in our education. Dr. Chairman Kwong, Madam Chair, I am concerned about three issues: NSL education in tertiary institutions, in particular the UGC-funded organizations. I have heard a lot of comments that they are just going through the motion and they're not, that they're merely scratching the surface. And also in the UGC-funded universities and indeed other tertiary institutions, we should be concerned about the benefits of the teaching staff. In Hong Kong, there are two strange restrictions. Like the public universities cannot admit more than 20% of overseas students, and in private institutions no more than 10%. This is running counter to our population policy. How can we conduct a review in a way that enable Hong Kong and the profession to be developed in a more healthy manner instead of shrinking?
Thank you, Mr. Dennis Leung. Thank you, Chair. I would like to discuss that maybe we should introduce applied learning courses in relation to vocational training besides the DSE curriculum, so as to meet the manpower shortage of different industries, and about sub-degree programs. For secondary schools graduates who cannot get a place in sub-degree or degree programs, maybe sub-degree programs can help them, and about regulation of these programs. Professor Sun Dong, thank you. I would like to explore the management issues of secondary schools in Hong Kong. In the past decades, we gave autonomy to secondary schools or universities. It was UGC which managed the 8 universities as public bodies. These 8 universities can play a more important role and tie in with the development of the country. So what is the positioning and the role played by UGC? What about the structure and composition of the UGC? We have been adhering to the old ways in the past 30 years. Under the new system, I hope we can have some room to explore the issue. Now it is my turn. Members mentioned a lot of issues that are close to the public's heart. Now about the professional conducts and practical guidelines. It has been implemented for several decades. It is outdated. It is time to study and review whether we should use basic law as a basic law qualification as a prerequisite for teachers to be registered. Teachers are the most important elements in education. About national education, I have a declaration to make. I teach basic laws in university. I have hands-on experience that in terms of national education, universities are not catching up with the reality. We have to ensure that teachers are well aware, are familiar with the national security law and so on. Otherwise, there will be a huge problem. We have to review the system. I totally agree with some members in that we have a dwindling, we have a dropping birth rate. We have to reestablish our education brand. When secondary schools propose redevelopment plan, we should put this in the context of the dwindling birth rate and meet the future need. We have to improve and update the hardware of some schools. And also, there are some other issues. Some Hong Kong residents are studying in the mainland. And in secondary school, a focus is put on the art subject rather than the science subjects. According to many universities, they don't have enough applicants for their science degrees programs. So we have to make it more diversified. We will have ample opportunities to discuss these topics, and if you come up with any new ideas, feel free to write to us. About the subcommittee proposed by Mr. Stanley Ng, I think this is very meaningful. At the House Committee meeting last Friday, many members have proposed similar ideas. Since a member has proposed to establish this subcommittee under this panel, we will have further discussion before the next meeting. If it is agreeable to members, we will make the application with the House Committee. If you have any suggestions to make to the Secretary for Education, I and the Deputy Chairman will meet with the Secretary about the work plan of the panel. So we will set priorities for issues. We will invite the Secretary to brief us on the important topics, and feel free to write to us. If there are no other suggestions, then this is the end of our first meeting. Thank you very much for your participation. So please give us your idea. Thank you.